Hi guys, welcome back to G Chats with your host G. We are in the G spot as always, and I want to say before anything, happy Mother's Day. This is our Mother's Day episode. I'm releasing this on Friday, but Mother's Day is on Sunday. I do have something super exciting planned unintentionally for Mother's Day for the business. But it's really exciting and you guys will find out later about it. But yeah, happy Mother's Day. And because this is our Mother's Day episode, I wanted to have the topic be around mothers and be around specifically the hormones and really how to nourish, support yourself postpartum. So in this, I structured it. We're going to talk about what's happening with your hormones when you are pregnant and how that dramatically all changes as soon as you give birth, and then ways that you could support all of these changes postpartum, because, I feel like a lot of these things are left out. And something that I've heard quite a bit and I see quite a bit is, I think our bodies are always expected by doctors to just go back to normal. And they give after 6 weeks, after 8 weeks. And it's just it's not reproductive health, and reproductive health care is not a one size fits all. So one woman might heal in 4 weeks while others aren't feeling well until 10. And some people will have postpartum depression and then some people won't. And I think it's so important, and this episode is going to be so nice because we're going to talk about what contributes to all of these things and how you can support it if you feel like you're struggling in each of these areas. So I don't want to waste any more time with the intro. So without further ado, we are going to start with what's happening during pregnancy. So you have obviously 3 trimesters, and in the first trimester, this is what I like to call the corpus luteum era. So the corpus luteum, if you did not know, is a temporary hormone secreting structure within the ovary. So after ovulation, the empty follicle, so there was a follicle that was mature. There's multiple follicles that are maturing, but there's only one that dominates. The one that dominates and releases, bursts out the cell. This is the empty follicle in the ovary that now becomes the corpus luteum. And this acts like a mini endocrine gland temporarily. And its job is to produce progesterone and a little bit of estrogen to prepare and maintain the uterine lining in anticipation for implantation. So the key hormones here are the HCG hormone. This is secreted by the embryo after implantation, and it tells the corpus luteum, don't die and keep making progesterone. So the corpus luteum continues to make the progesterone to support this embryo. And this is exactly why the HCG hormone is the one that's detected in pregnancy tests. So that is the first hormone that the embryo is secreting as soon as it implants into the uterine lining. And the corpus luteum wants to keep that implantation, support that implantation, so it will produce the progesterone. So the progesterone from the corpus luteum will thicken and stabilize the uterine lining, the endometrium, so that the embryo can implant, and it calms the uterus so that it doesn't contract, because you don't want contraction. You don't want to lose this implantation. So it'll calm the uterus so that it doesn't contract, and it slows down digestion, which can cause constipation and nausea. So next we have the second and the third trimester. So this is where the placenta takes over. So the placenta is the temporary organ that's formed from fetal and maternal tissue that nourishes the baby. So around weeks 10 and 12, the placenta fully takes over hormone production, and the corpus luteum, that follicle in your ovary, it dies off. So the key hormones that are now being produced by the placenta is number 1, estrogen. This helps grow the uterus and the blood vessels. It supports fetal organ development. It promotes breast tissue growth. It stimulates the liver to produce more binding proteins, which is why the thyroid and cortisol levels do seem higher during pregnancy. The next hormone is progesterone. So now the placenta is the one producing the progesterone, and this continues to suppress the contractions. It'll maintain the uterine environment. You also have a third hormone of the human placental lactogen, the HPL. And this shifts mom's metabolism to favor the baby. So it breaks down fats for mom to use, so more glucose goes to the baby. It increases insulin resistance in mom, which can lead to sometimes gestational diabetes. We also have relaxin, which is another hormone that comes from the ovaries and the placenta. It loosens the ligaments and the pubic symphysis for labor. It softens the cervix. And we have cortisol, which is your stress hormone, and it comes from the placenta and the maternal adrenal glands. So just our natural adrenal glands. It helps mature the fetal's lungs. It helps support fetal metabolism. It contributes to maternal insulin resistance and inflammation. And then what's gearing up right at the end of the third trimester and towards the end of pregnancy and preparing for birth, we start to see oxytocin from the mommy's brain, and these levels stay low throughout pregnancy, but the uterus can become more sensitive to it as labor nears. And it's the one that triggers contractions during labor. Of course, it is the stress hormone, so it has a reaction to the contractions. And we have prolactin from the pituitary gland. So this prepares breast tissue to make milk, but high estrogen throughout pregnancy is blocking the actual milk release until after birth. So we are going to talk about exactly what happens once you give birth, but that's what's happening while you are pregnant. So there's a lot of hormones involved. They're all working together. They're all doing their own thing while simultaneously functioning as a system and helping each other out to nourish the baby. And this is just such a beautiful thing. Like, I love talking about this because I just think it's so beautiful, and it's something that like you have to go in like ready for. And I feel like a lot of women don't know all of the things that's happening in their body. And I just feel like one day when I am pregnant, I just know that now that I know so much about my body and I'm in this world of female reproductive health, I can't imagine what I'm going to feel like, the amount of like love and gratitude that I'm going to feel in my own body to understand fully what my body is doing is just amazing. So I just love learning about this because I think pregnancy is a beautiful thing. I think labor and delivery can be a beautiful thing, although I do recognize that it can be traumatic for some people. But I just think like motherhood and all of this is so beautiful. And I find that it's so empowering to know and like understand what's happening within your own body. It just feels so good. It feels so empowering. And that's part of why for this Mother's Day, I wanted to make this video, because for those of you who are watching, if you are pregnant, congratulations, A, but B, I just hope that this video makes you feel so like empowered, like wow, in awe of your body and of your hormones and what it's doing for the baby. And now with the second part, I hope that it makes you feel informed and prepared going into postpartum, because I do want to talk about the hormonal cascade that happens immediately after birth. So there is a hormonal crash as soon as you give birth. So number one, we have to talk about when you give birth to the baby. Basically, the second birth that you have is the placenta. So the placenta gets delivered and the estrogen and the progesterone levels plummet immediately. And this is because, as we just said, during pregnancy, the placenta, once it fully develops, is the main producer of both hormones. So once it's gone, those hormones crash within hours after giving birth. So what that drop now triggers is prolactin to be released, which is the milk-making hormone. So estrogen throughout pregnancy was high, and that has been suppressing the prolactin from actually functioning. So yes, prolactin was climbing during pregnancy, but the estrogen was suppressing it from fully functioning, even though the levels were high during pregnancy. So now that estrogen is gone, the prolactin is now active. So this enables milk production to begin, especially if breastfeeding starts, which is why typically in the hospital, they want you to try to get the baby to latch immediately, because the estrogen drop does trigger prolactin to rise in action. But the thing to really get the action going is the action of breastfeeding, like the actual suction and movement from the baby and getting the milk out. So it's not just a rise in the level, because the prolactin levels have been climbing the entire time. They just haven't been able to be released because of how high the estrogen is. And now the estrogen dips and the prolactin levels are like, we're ready to go. Give us the baby. So you want to try to latch while you are in the hospital after you give birth to get that action going to keep the prolactin flourishing. So this leads into the oxytocin surge, which is the bonding and milk letdown hormone. So it is stimulated by the nipple stimulation. So as I mentioned, you want to get the baby to latch. And this nipple stimulation is what stimulates oxytocin, and also the skin to skin contact. So that is why they will do skin to skin with the mom and the baby, and skin to skin, the father and the baby do it as well. But for the mom in particular, this is specifically for the oxytocin surge. It works with prolactin to release the milk. So it works together. Prolactin is what makes the milk, but then the oxytocin is what releases it, what lets it down. So oxytocin is very important, and that's why that stimulation, the action, is so important, and not just like, oh, you're making the milk. Like, making the milk is one thing, but you got to get the milk out, and really the baby is the only thing that can do that. That nipple stimulation and that oxytocin that's released from our bodies through that nipple stimulation and that skin to skin is what makes the difference. So oxytocin also promotes bonding and healing. However, number 4 of the hormones that we need to talk about is the drop of estrogen, because this drop in estrogen unfortunately drops serotonin. So estrogen is a key modulator of serotonin, which is your mood stabilizing neurotransmitter. So when estrogen crashes, serotonin can plummet as well. And this can lead to mood swings, sadness or apathy, irritability, the baby blues, or postpartum depression. So estrogen, again, it crashes, serotonin will crash, and there is mood instability. And oxytocin may buffer this. It might, but it's not always enough. So it is normal to feel irritability and all of the things we just talked about because your serotonin is crashing. And then once that happens, prolactin now suppresses ovulation. So prolactin, the hormone that's making your milk, is really high, and high prolactin, especially when breastfeeding frequently all the time, suppresses your gonadotropin releasing hormone, the GnRH, which prevents the LH and FSH, so your luteinizing hormone and your follicle stimulating hormone, from triggering ovulation. And this delays the return of your menstrual cycle. So high prolactin, if you are a mom who's breastfeeding, this can suppress ovulation, which can act as natural birth control. However, it is possible that some people, while they're breastfeeding, they do end up ovulating. So this is not guaranteed, but typically what the hormones are doing is this high level of prolactin does in turn suppress the LH and FSH hormones, which in turn stops you from ovulating. This can vary from woman to woman, but it is something that we see and is very common. Some women will end up ovulating anyways, and their LH and FSH hormones just are powerful and override the prolactin, and they do ovulate. But in most cases, women take a few months to get their periods back because they are breastfeeding and this prolactin level is so high. So the added layer to that is cortisol, and cortisol is your stress hormone, and cortisol may stay high postpartum, and this is because birth is physically traumatic and there's sleep deprivation and stress. It all keeps your cortisol high, and high cortisol does worsen inflammation, it disrupts sleep, and it can worsen mood swings if it's not balanced. So cortisol plus the serotonin imbalance is equal to a risk of postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. So in summary, like, everything that's happening postpartum is literally, and I literally mean this, it is a system. Like, nothing is working on its own. Your whole body is, all of your hormones, your entire endocrine system is just functioning in this wheel all together. And so something that's not talked about enough is how can you support this crazy system postpartum, right? Like we know that this is happening. We know that these crashes to estrogen and cortisol is high and prolactin is high and ovulation is being suppressed. Like we know all of these things are happening postpartum. But how can we support it rather than just assuming our bodies will go right back to normal? Because that's a sentiment that I hear from a lot of mothers. I have a lot of customers who are moms, and they talk a lot about how like their body just took forever to go back to normal and feel like themselves again. So this next part of the podcast, I wanted to make sure to give almost like a guide on how you could support naturally this transitional period while you're breastfeeding or not breastfeeding, like what you can do, what are supplements that you can take, what are proven methods to help support this. 90% of these, if not 100% of these, are like very natural ways, because I understand like if you are breastfeeding, and most people will even attempt to breastfeed. So if you are, a lot of medications can like interfere with that and things like that. So I wanted to keep this very like scientifically backed, but with some like natural things that are still rooted in science to kind of like guide you. So number one, I want to first talk about I broke this up into the different hormones, what they're doing, and then how you can support them. So supporting the hormonal crash in this chain reaction after birth is so important. So the first hormone we need to talk about that's crashing is none other than estrogen, which then causes serotonin to drop, and this causes your mood to spiral. So estrogen plummeting is equivalent to then serotonin synthesis and receptor activity dropping, and your mood can become very fragile during this time. And this is one of the core reasons that women suffer with postpartum depression. So under discuss supports, and this is with everything that I'm saying, please make sure that you check in with your physician, your provider, to make sure that these are all right for you. So the first thing is L-tryptophan. This supports serotonin production. You want to start low with L-tryptophan, especially if you're not breastfeeding or you're cleared by your provider, because doctors rarely mention the supplement to women unless a woman is already depressed, which is super unfortunate. So this helps with serotonin production. Another herb that's really helpful is saffron extract. So this is clinically shown to support mood in postpartum women. It is safe while breastfeeding, which is a plus, at the proper dose. So you want to take roughly 15 to 30 milligrams per day. And it has been shown clinically to be as effective as low-dose SSRIs in mild to moderate depression, which is amazing. And again, not something that I feel like it's talked about, like, hey, you should try saffron extract. So this is like a really good thing to supplement into your body. I know saffron extract can be used as like a tea. You can take it in pill form, but it's a great supplement. Another amazing supplement for this estrogen crash and serotonin drop is magnesium glycinate. Whether you are not pregnant, you just had your baby, I just think every single person with a vagina, with a uterus, like anybody who has female reproductive organs should be taking magnesium glycinate. It is just such an amazing supplement. It rebuilds the neurotransmitter balance. It can reduce cortisol levels. It can improve your sleep and improve brain fog. All of the things that we see in postpartum. We also can support neuroinflammation through curcumin. You could do omega-3s and lion's mane. All of these will rebuild the neuroplasticity post-birth. So those are just like a few options for those categories of hormones. The next category of hormones I want to talk about is the progesterone drop and the loss of your nervous system chill. So again, what's happening is progesterone has natural anti-anxiety effects through your GABA receptors. And once it crashes postpartum, many women feel wired, anxious, overstimulated, and unable to sleep, especially when they're exhausted. So they kind of have this like wired but tired feeling. And it's really important to support this drop. So under discussed supports are number one, L-theanine. So this can support the parasympathetic nervous system without sedating you, because a lot of times it's like, oh, we can support the parasympathetic nervous system and like put you to sleep so that you could get your rest. And it's like, you can support it with L-theanine. You don't have to sedate someone. Most doctors honestly don't know how to rebuild the GABA tone naturally. So this L-theanine's a great product to use postpartum. We also have inositol. This supports the GABAergic tone. It balances your mood. It improves your sleep architecture, like how you're sleeping in your sleep-wake cycle. It also is helpful for blood sugar regulation and postpartum. And another thing that you could do is a warm castor oil pack on the liver at night, something that I feel like a lot of people try to disprove, but it is an ancient, evidence-backed way to calm the nervous system, and it supports the detox of hormone byproducts. So it's almost never recommended, but it is safe, it's affordable, and it's powerful. So I definitely recommend the castor oil packs on your liver. But yeah, L-theanine, inositol, great supplements, both of which are in With Harmony, our probiotic supplement. And With Harmony is such a good product to take postpartum. It really is. And I had postpartum mommies in my mind when I formulated it. So, and we'll talk about ashwagandha is inside of it. We will talk about it here in a few. But just a great product to have even after breastfeeding, since there is a little bit of a concern about using ashwagandha while you are breastfeeding. We're going to get to all of that. But yeah, L-theanine, inositol, castor oil packs, great for supporting the progesterone drop and the loss of your nervous system chill. But the next thing that you want to support is the rise of your prolactin, which is your breast milk making hormone, and the whole ovulation suppression and that dopamine crash. So prolactin levels, they're staying high, of course, to keep the milk supply up, but high prolactin suppresses dopamine, as we talked about, which can lead to sadness and low motivation. So under discussed supports is velvet bean, which is scientifically known as Mucuna, I think I'm saying this right, Mucuna pruriens. And this is velvet bean, which is a natural way to boost your dopamine by providing L-dopa. So it helps women feel joy again. And I've seen a lot of recipes that you can use this to make like mucuna prurian like balls, like people bake with it and stuff like that. And they call it like little dopamine balls, and they're super helpful postpartum to help you feel joy again and boost that dopamine naturally. And by feel that joy again, it will help literally comfort that dopamine hormone and not just make you functional, right? And so using this carefully is super important with medical supervision, especially if you are breastfeeding. So again, with everything, just make sure that you can breastfeed and take this, or it's good for your medical condition. Another supportive supplement is rhodiola rosea, which is also in With Harmony, but rhodiola rosea is an adaptogen that increases dopamine and norepinephrine while balancing stress. It's shown to improve resilience and mental clarity, and low doses are safe postpartum. And last but not least, this isn't a supplement, but something creative like long walks, getting into painting, drawing, arts and crafts, singing, dancing, like music. These creative works do help spike dopamine naturally. So the brain is craving stimulation and not just baby care, and nobody really talks about that. So go on walks. Even walks are great with the stroller. If the weather permits, wherever you are, go on walks. That could be really helpful. Buy beads and string, make bracelets, and just like enjoy, try to find enjoyment in something creative. If working out was your thing while you were pregnant and before you were pregnant, light workout routines, following something on a TV and doing that, putting on your workout outfits, like your brain is craving creativity. So a structured novelty will really, really help, and some creative work can go a long way. So supporting prolactin, the rise of prolactin, the ovulation suppression, and dopamine crashes is the velvet bean, the rhodiola rosea, and arts and crafts, something creative, music. Next up, we have oxytocin fluctuations and the uterine healing. So, as we mentioned, oxytocin fluctuations is what's going to help heal your uterus. And this is also responsible for emotional volatility. So, what's happening is oxytocin spikes, and it does this during the bonding, and breastfeeding can be fragile during this time because a lack of touch, isolation, or even a traumatic birth can block the production of oxytocin. So, under discussed supports, cuddle hormone stimulation could be very helpful. So, skin to skin with your partner could be really beneficial. Massages, I know there's a ton of places that do like postnatal massages, warm baths, a weighted blanket. All of these things are super important for a mother, and the mom needs touch and oxytocin just as much as the baby does. And I feel like, unfortunately, women don't know that. A lot of women think like, oh, I need to do skin to skin for the baby and the bonding, and just like it's in relation to the baby. But like the mom needs touch, even if it's from a weighted blanket, even if it's through something like skin to skin with their partner, or even just like a bath. Like they need their skin to be comforted. Like that is super, super important. So cuddle hormone stimulation is real. You can also support these fluctuations of oxytocin and uterine healing through homeopathic arnica or post-birth flower essence. So these are emotionally calming after birth trauma or dissociation, and this helps with calming down the nervous system. You also can do things like gentle pelvic floor therapy, which I'm going to bring up in like another paragraph or two, because gentle pelvic floor therapy in the very beginning, like a child's pose or something, if your doctor allows you to, could be very beneficial because it can encourage the uterus to go back and shrink to its size. It can allow for oxytocin to release, and it's very healing for your pelvic floor muscles. So consider all of those things for this oxytocin fluctuation. Another hormone thing that we want to talk about and support is your cortisol overdrive and your inflammatory overload, because it's real. It's a real thing that's happening. So stress, the lack of sleep, physical trauma from birth, they're all sustaining high cortisol, and this can disrupt your healing process. It can disrupt your gut health, your thyroid, your immune function. So some supports are holy basil or ashwagandha if you're not breastfeeding. There are cortisol modulators to bring stress back to baseline. You could also create a postpartum adrenal cocktail. So something like a 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt plus 4 ounces of orange juice with a magnesium powder can feed the adrenal function and minerals after blood loss when you give birth. And you could do nervous system tools that don't require time or money. So something like humming will stimulate the vagus nerve. Stimulating your vagus nerve postpartum is very important. You can also stimulate it by doing something like this. If you're watching, great. If you're not, I will try to explain it. But if you look off to one corner of your eye, so right now I'm looking off to the left corner, and you do this very strongly and you hold it and you just breathe through it. And you can close your eyes and do this. So look off to the left. I'm looking at the left side. I have my eyes closed. Hold that. Keep doing that for about 20 seconds. Then without opening your eyes, you're going to want to shift your eyes to the other side. So now I have my eyes shifted to the right side and I'm looking over as far as I can in the corner of my eye, as far as possible. And then you can open your eyes and you could keep alternating, but that's a helpful way to stimulate the vagus nerve. Humming's another one. So just a simple like just humming. It can also be really helpful while you're holding your baby and if you're trying to rock them to sleep, to hum. So if you're just like rocking, you're like, it could be very helpful for stimulating the vagus nerve. And then EFT tapping for grief and rage is also very helpful. And you don't have to go through grief or rage to do this, but there's different points you could do in between your eyebrow. You could do just under your eyebrow. The top of your head is another place. Just below the collarbone is another place that people do EFT tapping. So there's a lot of different places. This all calms calms the nervous system, which is very, very helpful if you are suffering with a cortisol overdrive and this is now leading to an inflammatory overload. You're going to want to regulate cortisol from the bottom up, and that starts with the nervous system. So another focus is the gut, vaginal, and pelvic floor therapy recovery area. So what's happening during this time is that antibiotics, if you had surgery and you were given antibiotics as a prophylaxis, or let's say you tested positive for GBS, which is group B strep, and you got put on penicillin or some other antibiotic, you're probably on antibiotics, which could have affected your gut health and your vaginal health, your vaginal microbiome, gut microbiome during your labor and delivery. So antibiotics, stress, hormone shifts, and the potential tearing can all impact the microbiome, the urinary tract, and your pelvic nerves. So what you want to do is you want to support the vaginal microbiome. You can do a vaginal suppository of good bacteria, lactobacillus, and rebuild that vaginal flora, especially if you did tear or you did take antibiotics for group B strep and those were involved. You also can support your vaginal microbiome with an oral probiotic if putting something up your vagina doesn't make sense because you're too sensitive because you just gave birth. So I don't normally recommend like putting anything in there because like it was just traumatic what your vagina went through. So I think that should be given a bit of time before you start inserting things up your V. So you can then support your vaginal microbiome with an oral probiotic, but this is also important because you feed two birds with one stone. You're not just healing the vaginal microbiome, but you're also healing your gut microbiome. And also probiotic strains like Bifidobacterium breve and Lactobacillus plantarum have been shown to metabolize estrogen. They support estrogen detox via the gut, and it lowers the risk of postpartum estrogen dominant symptoms like clots, headaches, or even mood swings. So this is a really helpful thing to do. Probiotics orally. It's kind of just like a good, let's just fix all the problems. So balancing the gut, balancing the vagina, but also like supporting the estrogen metabolism is really important. And pelvic floor therapy. So like, again, your pelvic floor muscles have been holding the weight of this baby for months. And now you just gave birth and there's chronic tension. There might be nerve damage. There's a lot going on there. And unfortunately, a lot of people think that pelvic floor therapy should be for weakness or someone who like literally had their abdomen cut through during a C-section, but that's not true. You can start pelvic floor therapy starting at 6 weeks postpartum, and this can help for those of you who need nerve training and trauma processing. It's not just about the muscles. I myself do pelvic floor therapy. I'm not a mom. I did not have a baby, but I do pelvic floor therapy because there's been trauma in my pelvic floor muscles after my urinary tract infections, and so pelvic floor therapy not only helped with my muscles and retraining myself how to pee and things like that, but also retraining my nerves and making sure that I feel safe in my body, and also trauma processing because all of my UTIs were very traumatizing to me, and the same can be applied to pregnancy and especially labor. It can be traumatic for some people, and so postpartum recovery should involve pelvic floor therapy to help with the trauma processing and the nerve retraining. And what many people don't know is that it is covered by insurance in many states, and that is specifically for people who are postpartum, people who just had a baby. So if you did just have a baby and you're at the 6-week mark, please explore pelvic floor therapy because chances are you are fully capable of receiving this care, and it's likely covered under your insurance. Many states cover it. It's just doctors do not tell women this. It's not something that doctors require or think it's medically necessary. I beg to differ. I feel like they are doctors. Pelvic floor therapists are doctors, and I fully believe that if you are able to see a pelvic floor therapist during your pregnancy and postpartum, you absolutely should. I've heard amazing stories of women who have had a pelvic floor therapist during their pregnancy and had such a smooth birth. Some people don't always have the smoothest births, but at least then you can set yourself up for a positive recovery. So if you are able to look into pelvic floor therapy and potentially have that covered by your insurance, because that's something that your body and those muscles all need at that time. So that was it for this video. It's not a super long video, but I wanted to talk about what's happening during pregnancy, what is happening when you give birth, and how you can support yourself postpartum. I want all of you mamas to take it easy on yourself. You are so strong. You're so beautiful. You're so powerful. Your body is amazing. Give yourself grace. Give yourself rest if it's possible. And just know that there is support. Explore those support systems, whether it's something physical like pelvic floor therapy or supplemental like using L-theanine, ashwagandha, inositol. But again, remember, recovery is not a one size fits all. So what's going to work for you might not work for somebody else. Be gentle with other mothers because something might work for you and not for another mom. And it's really important that we all support each other. I'm not a mom, but it's important that us in this reproductive care community do support each other and understand that reproductive care is not a one size fits all. And we just want everyone to receive the care that they need. And whether that is physical care, whether that is supplemental care and herbalistic care, regardless of what care looks like for you and to you, you deserve care as a new mom. And I hope and I pray that this video helps you feel informed, empowered, and excited to care for your own body. But yeah. So I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for tuning in this episode. Happy Mother's Day again, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.